every single day on The View is a contest in stupidity. Truly, it's an amazingly competitive match between some of the dumbest people on earth. No one really notices on a given day that Whoopi Goldberg is a very dumb person who says very dumb things, because everybody else is so dumb on The View that she's constantly outshone. She seems like the most sane person on The View, which is kind of an amazing statement. Trying to suss out which person on The View is least intelligent is an exercise in quantum mechanics.
Imagine this, a calm, cheerful daytime talk show filled with smiling hosts, pastel-colored sets, and an audience trained to clap at every feel-good comment. In the middle of it all sits Whoopi Goldberg, a longtime host of The View. She's relaxed, confident, and ready to deliver another one of her emotional, off-the-cuff speeches that the audience usually eats right up. But then, enter Ben Shapiro, though not physically. He doesn't actually show up on The View. No, Ben operates from a distance. He watches clips, takes notes, and responds like a debate machine programmed to sniff out flawed arguments.
Whoopi Goldberg, she of the genius sort of sage presence on The View. She's like, I'm not saying that maybe white people need to get beaten up for police reform to happen, but maybe white people need to get beaten up for police reform to happen.
But how many times do we need to see white people also get beaten before anybody will do anything?
Okay, so first of all, this is unbelievably stupid.
Yep.
We've seen many cases of police brutality against white people.
His voice is fast, sharp, and he delivers facts like bullets. While The View might be filled with opinions and personal stories, Ben shows up with stats, history, and a whole lot of confidence. This time, Whoopi had offered up one of her usual speeches, a passionate monologue that was more emotion than logic. She said something along the lines of, "I just feel like something's wrong, so clearly something is wrong." That was her argument, not evidence. Not proof, just a feeling. Normally, the rest of the panel would nod in agreement, the audience would clap, and they'd move on. But Ben? Ben wasn't about to let that slide. He responded with a calm, simple, "actually," and from that moment on, it was game over. Ben didn't just disagree. He completely took apart her statement, piece by piece, in real time. It was like watching someone fix a car engine in the dark with no manual but somehow still getting it to work. He dropped facts, stats, and references faster than Whoopi could come up with a comeback. You could almost see the confusion on her face. It was like her brain had hit a wall. She looked for a way out, a response, anything but nothing came. It was awkward. It was tense. It was one of those moments.
Well, folks, as you know, I love one show on TV more than any show on TV. The View.
Gary!
I've had a lifelong ambition to actually be a guest on The View. They'll never have me on, of course, because it would go horribly for them. But today, we're going to go through some of the cringiest moments from The View, a repository of nearly all human stupidity, total IQ 7.
Moments where the silence says more than any words ever could. Still, Whoopi tried. She raised her voice, thinking that maybe if she spoke louder, her point would feel stronger. When that didn't work, she fell back on her favorite line. Well, I just think now, on The View, that line usually works like magic. It's a kind of verbal mic drop, as if saying, "I just think" somehow makes your opinion untouchable. But Ben wasn't fazed. He calmly responded with economic theories, historical references, and facts most people probably hadn't heard of before. He didn't yell. He didn't even get emotional. He just laid everything out like a teacher giving a lecture. Meanwhile, the audience gave an uncomfortable laugh, not because anything was funny, but because they genuinely didn't know how to react. Joy Behar squinted, trying to understand what just happened. The other hosts shifted in their chairs. Whoopi, for once, was complete.
She's trying to make an anti-Trump argument. She's like, I can say anything I want. And she's like, I'm going to say something super racist. They're all like, yeah. Well, apparently her hair was not her only bad decision that day.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race. No, it's about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
No!
That's what it's about.
Completely out of things to say. And then came the internet. Twitter exploded. People started posting clips and making memes within minutes. Some said it was like watching a high-speed debate car crash. Others joked that Whoopi needed to file an emotional restraining order against Ben. Instagram, Reddit, and TikTok all joined in. Screenshots of Whoopi's blank stare flew around like wildfire. It wasn't just funny, it was brutal. People started digging up old clips of Whoopi making strange or poorly thought-out comments. Remember the time she said something so historically wrong that even Wikipedia needed a moment to recover? Or that time she tried to explain how money works and somehow made up a new version of Monopoly? Yeah, all of that came rushing back. And when you stack all of that against Ben's calm, well-prepared response, the contrast was painful. It was like putting a high school book report next to a college thesis. No matter how much passion Whoopi had, it just didn't stand up to someone who came ready for a real debate. To be fair, Whoopi wasn't entirely defenseless. She still had the backing of mainstream media. The next morning, articles and think pieces popped up online faster than popcorn. Titles like Why Emotional Intelligence Matters
On who you talk to. Whoopi always available to sign in.
Cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
To both compare Israel and the United States to terrorist organizations and also compare terrorist organizations to apparently not terrorist organizations. Like, Hamas is not a terrorist organization? Oh, man. It is amazing because Whoopi is sort of seen on this show as sort of the wise old sage. And I have to say, you need better sages.
You know,
There's more than cold facts, and Ben Shapiro misses the bigger picture, tried to spin the moment in her favor. Some even praised her for speaking her truth, despite how messy that truth sounded. But Ben didn't seem to care. He stayed cool, sipped his coffee, and went on with his day like someone who just aced a test. His fans celebrated. His critics tried to find holes in his argument but struggled. And through it all, he never raised his voice or made it personal. He just did what he always does: talk fast, drop facts, and keep moving. What made this moment stand out wasn't just the clash of ideas. It was that pause, that moment of silence when Whoopi had nothing left to say. In a world where everyone always has an opinion, a silence like that is rare. It was uncomfortable, raw, and unforgettable. That's what stuck with people. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't even really about who was right or wrong. It was about being prepared. Ben came with tools, facts, research, and a plan. Whoopi came with feelings and vibes. And while
So Whoopi Goldberg was on that great repository of all human intelligence, The View, and she was explaining that people who are not using masks are going to make things more dangerous for themselves. She was talking about how the mask will protect you from the flu. Oh, Lord. Here we go.
well, no, you know.
Well, you did have that.
I did have a cough, and when you
Had a
did
little
not show
cold.
up, Brian goes, thanks, Whoopi's out. Well, I assume that is because when you have little ones, you will always have things that you travel with. So as people tell you, yeah, take off your mask, don't worry about it, we're not going to check it anymore. Just know the flu
It's still
will fly in.
yeah.
Okay, 'cause the flu flew in and got me.
Okay, so I'm just going to point out here that the entire narrative on the mask was about COVID. And now you should probably wear a mask because if you take off the mask, the flu will fly in.
there's nothing wrong with speaking from the heart, sometimes the heart needs help from the brain. In the end, this wasn't just a one-time internet moment. It became a reminder of something bigger, that reality doesn't always bend to our emotions. Just because something feels true doesn't mean it is. And in a world full of noise, sometimes the quietest moment, the pause where someone has no answer, says the most. There was a silence so heavy, it felt like the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. The audience didn't know what to do, clap, cry, or just pretend nothing happened. Even the poor guy in charge of the applause sign gave up and took a break. That's how awkward and tense it got. It wasn't just a pause, it was the kind of silence that separates people who just talk from those who actually think. While one side was rambling emotionally, Ben Shapiro came through with sharp, clear points, straight facts. Like a pro, he stayed calm and confident. And of course, there was Whoopi Goldberg. Clearly still licking her wounds, she tried to explain herself again.
We saw Whoopi Goldberg over the weekend to suggest that Nikki Haley is not a new generation. How can you say she's a new generation? Whoopi Goldberg is 67 years old. Nikki Haley is 51 years old. Donald Trump is nearing 80. Joe Biden is 80. So yeah, technically speaking, she is in fact a new generation, but here is Whoopi Goldberg speaking for the youth of America.
Now that's what they're saying. Suddenly, everybody said, oh yeah, we should reflect all of us. Okay.
But her follow-up only made things worse. It wasn't really an explanation. It was more like a confusing performance of denial, like someone dancing around the truth hoping nobody notices. Her main defense? I felt like what I said was valid because it felt valid when I said it. That's like trying to return a toaster without a receipt just because it didn't toast your bagel right. Emotion isn't proof, and Whoopi's attempt to justify herself only made things messier. Ben, on the other hand, stayed completely unfazed. His idea of bragging isn't loud or flashy. He simply referenced Aristotle in a flat tone and probably sent out a few article links nobody asked for. If Wikipedia had Wi-Fi, a serious tone, and a superiority complex, it would be Ben Shapiro. Whether you like him or not, and plenty of people don't Ben won that moment online. Not because he's always right, but because Whoopi walked into that debate with glitter, big emotions, and no backup. And she walked out with a headache and a bunch of confused viewers. Ben has his critics. Some say he talks too fast, comes off arrogant, or sounds like he's racing a clock on a quiz show.
This was taken as anti-Semitism. She didn't say that Jews weren't specifically targeted, by the way. She didn't actually say an anti-Semitic thing the way that Whoopi Goldberg did. She just said that when people are inhumane to each other, bad things happen. For this great crime, she was not suspended. She was fired outright from The Mandalorian, losing presumably hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary because she was one of the main characters and they were considering a spinoff of The Mandalorian with Gina. They fired Gina, so we hired her. Right? We have a new movie that's coming out with Gina Carano in the next couple of months, which I'm excited to tell you about. Okay, but they fired her outright, did Disney. Whoopi Goldberg says something far worse in every respect than Gina Carano ever said about the Holocaust. And she's going to get a 2-week suspension.
But when the other side's only argument is, well, I feel like this should be true. Suddenly, Ben starts to sound like a modern-day philosopher. In this debate, Ben wasn't just discussing. He was tearing through arguments like a wood chipper going through twigs. Once Whoopi's emotional reasoning got pulled into that logic machine, it didn't stand a chance. Even her co-hosts looked stunned like they were watching someone lose badly and couldn't look away. At one point, one of them tried to ease the tension with a classic TV move. Let's just agree to disagree. Which really means, please stop being logical. You're ruining the mood. After the episode aired, Ben's clip blew up online. In just one day, it had more views than The View got in an entire week. And sure, that might not be saying much, but still the internet gave the win to Ben. Meanwhile, The View acted like nothing ever happened. They jumped straight in.
Never look for consistency with the left. It is all just a game of power. In any case, Goldberg apparently is livid and feels humiliated over the suspension. She feels ABC executives mishandled this. She followed their playbook. She went on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and then apologized again on The View the next day, the source told the Post. Her ego has been hurt. She's telling people she's going to quit. Suspension from The View is like getting suspended from Bravo. The bar is very low. Prior to her suspension, sources that spoke with Page Six said that employees and executives, including insiders at Disney, were furious over her remarks and the fact she had not been disciplined yet.
Into a new segment, probably something soft like horoscopes or celebrity gossip. But just when you thought it was over, Ben dropped a podcast episode reviewing the entire thing. He broke it all down, quoted laws, and picked apart Whoopi's every sentence like a coach analyzing a game tape. While he did that, Whoopi probably lit a sage stick and prayed for peace. At the end of the day, this wasn't just a disagreement. It was a wake-up call. When your whole argument is based on how you feel and someone else comes in armed with facts and logic, you're going to lose. That's what made this moment live on through memes and jokes. Not because Ben is flawless, but because it was like challenging a chess master with finger puppets. So for anyone out there who starts their argument with, I feel like just know Ben Shapiro is somewhere cracking his knuckles, ready to turn your TED Talk into a logic demolition. And then came that moment again. The one where Whoopi had nothing left to say. 5 full seconds of blinking, stunned silence. Her brain clearly had hit a wall. Meanwhile, Ben just sat there, smug like a cat who had already knocked the glass off the table and was watching it shatter. The camera zoomed in, and you could almost hear the co-host's thoughts. Joy Behar looked frozen.
Whoopi Goldberg, yesterday, she did her full apology. So you'll remember that 2 days ago, Whoopi Goldberg went on The View and she suggested that the Holocaust was not about race. And this tied into a broader ideology of the left, which suggests that Jews are white people, and therefore the Holocaust was actually white people attacking white people, which is a thing she actually said on air. Then she went on Stephen Colbert, where she quasi-apologized and then doubled down and suggested once again that the Holocaust was not about racism because it was white people attacking other white people. She issued a written statement. The written statement came out before the Colbert appearance, but probably was written after she had taped for Colbert already. In any case, she came out on the air yesterday, and then she did her fulsome apology.
Sarah Haynes seemed like she was trying to signal for help. Sunny Hostin suddenly realized she had backed the wrong side. And Ben? He hit his final point like it was a mic drop. He didn't even need applause. That show aged 10 years in 10 minutes. This wasn't just a debate, it was a logic lesson wrapped in sarcasm, served with cold facts. If you bring good vibes and personal feelings to a serious discussion filled with facts and data, you're going to walk away with more than just embarrassment. And Whoopi's history doesn't help. She has a long record of controversial, confusing, and sometimes outright bizarre takes. And not in a funny, lighthearted way. More like the I wish I could look away kind of way. Remember when she said the Holocaust wasn't about race? Or the time she claimed black people couldn't be racist like everyone else? These weren't slip-ups, they were full-blown misfires. Every time she talks, it feels like her fans hold their breath, hoping she won't say something else that blows up the news again. Now, let's be fair, Ben Shapiro is no saint. He can be smug, sarcastic, and a bit much at times. But in moments like these, when he's laser-focused and ready to debate, he is less annoying and more like a missile of logic. And it worked. You can dislike the way he talks. You can think he's too intense, but it's hard to ignore how thoroughly he took apart Whoopi's points. That long pause, that frozen expression on her face, it wasn't just awkward. It was proof that she had run out of arguments. The camera panned across the studio, showing the host's uncomfortable reactions. It felt like a comedy show, but real. And when Ben made his final argument, calmly and clearly, it was over. Game, set, match. Because when emotions meet evidence, feelings lose. Every time.